Wavect, the web-free software company that understands what you want.
Hi everyone, welcome at Wavect. I have today a super special guest, super interesting, Alexander, who is a serial entrepreneur and angel investor. He's, for example, founder of VNX, co-chair of the VC Club LPEA, and also executive council member of ABBL and managing partner of 2B. So a lot of titles, and I'm definitely sure a lot more skills as well. And today we are going to talk about how to tokenize precious metals. Hey, thank you, Alexander, for being here. It's really an honor to have you on. And starting out, I would like to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. What are you passionate about? And maybe what are you up to at the moment as well?
Thank you very much, Kevin. Great pleasure to be on Wavect. And as you mentioned, my name is Alexander. I'm founder of VNX. And VNX is an asset tokenization platform, which is tokenizing precious metals. What I'm passionate about is technology. We've really seen how the technology in the past 30, 40 years, especially information technology, changed the world, how people live, how people interact. And I'm pretty sure that blockchain technology has a great potential to change how finances work. Therefore, I'm really passionate about how it will affect the world, how it develops. I'm very happy to participate in it in one way or another. And tokenization of precious metals, in my view, is a very, very important pillar for the development of the technology, because it provides a certain reference to like stable values that have been with humanity for over 5,000 years. Gold, for example, has been used as a means of payment for the last few thousand years. And that's what VNX provides. We provide tokenization of the precious metals, which may serve as the like value reference for the blockchain world or blockchain transactions.
Mm-hmm. So from my understanding, you are creating some specific tokenized assets yourself, or are you doing that for clients which all might want to have a separate gold token, for example? What's the...
We're doing it for clients. So okay. Clients can visit VNX, www.vnx.li or .io, register, pass KYC AML, deposit funds. They can deposit funds in Euro, in BTC, Ethereum, or in USDC, and then purchase VNX Gold, which is a token. One token is 1 gram of gold, fully backed by physical gold stored in Liechtenstein.
Mm-hmm. Super interesting. We've talked a lot about tokenization right now. How would you explain it to someone who has never heard of it?
Most people have heard about shares or bonds. Most people have heard about financial instruments. Most people have heard about checks or receipts. And I think in order to explain tokenization, it's better to have a reference to a particular product which people are familiar with. And tokenization of precious metals is, in essence, a confirmation of the ownership of physical gold or it could be physical silver, physical platinum. So that's in real world what it is. And the only difference to this confirmation, which can be take different forms in the real world, is that in blockchain world, it's done in the form of a token, which can be transferred. So that's actually in a nutshell, what tokenization is. It's a confirmation of the ownership, which is done in a capsule or in a token.
Mm-hmm. And why would you say blockchain is needed for that, right? Might be quite a basic question now, right? But I'm sure that some people are coming from a Web2 background watching that as well, and they might be interested in why can't I just do that on an exchange like as usual, right? And have that in a regular database.
Sure. I think here it's important then to take a step back and to try to understand the potential of the blockchain technology. Many people are speaking about Web 3.0. In essence, the potential of the blockchain technology is where the robots are speaking to robots, and the transactions are happening without human intervention. There is a series of smart contracts, what if, which leads to a particular outcome. In order for those outcomes to happen, there needs to be certain exchanges of value. And token in this particular case could be one of the, or VNX Gold, for example, could be one of the representation of value. 1 kilogram of gold is approximately 55,000 euro, for example, or let's take rounded number 50. And therefore, most people understand that if there is a particular transaction which is worth 50, then 1,000 tokens or 1 kilogram of gold bar can be transferred from one machine account to another machine account, thereby settling the transaction, again, without any human intervention. Of course, at the moment in the Web 2.0, there are different means, or even prior to the internet, there were different means of owning gold, there were different means of exchanging it. However, tokenization is important for the future development of the blockchain technologies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super interesting, right? So basically, all that concept around tokenization means we are now able to transfer value, right?
Transfer value, yes. Of course, at the moment, it mostly happens between human and human, or trading robots between trading robots. But in the future, it could be happening, for example, between automatically between wallet of an airplane which docked in a particular airport, and for the refueling or the servicing, this certain value has automatically been transferred as it's been predetermined in the system. And tokenization and asset-backed tokens, or tokens which are linked to particular items which are of value, then provide reference for the transactions.
Mm-hmm. So that sounds like a pretty amazing way to actually do that things, right? To actually extract or create further value for people that actually deal with these kind of assets, right? Are there also some kind of, I would say, considerations or even disadvantages that one should be aware of if using such a tokenized asset, right, which might be backed or not, right? There are different maybe approaches to that, or when actually issuing such an asset.
Mm-hmm. I think there are always considerations such as do your own research. This is always very, very important to do. In every technology, whenever it's new, first you have romantics coming into play. Then you have people who, let's put it this way, see it as a wild west to take advantage of the others. Therefore, when people are looking at projects or looking at the assets, of course, it's very important that they look at the regulatory environment, they look at whether there is anything behind it. That's why VNX is set up in Europe. We are in Liechtenstein. We're registered with the regulatory authorities here. We work with third parties to ensure that the precious metals are there, etc., etc., etc. So that is one of the major points to look for whether the project is regulated or whether it's in a reputable jurisdiction, whether the cross-reference is providing that the assets are indeed there. At the same time, the downside is quite obvious. It's or the risks are also quite obvious. Crypto industry is quite new, and you should be mindful about protecting your security of your assets. I mean, most people do it with Bitcoins, Ethereums, which are also obviously providing value, although they're quite volatile compared to, for example, VNX Gold. And they should take the same precautions. These are items which are of significant value when there is, as we mentioned, 1,000 tokens of VNX is like 55,000 euro. So it's a lot of money, and one needs to be super careful in storing and ensuring security of the assets.
Mm-hmm. So you basically mean all that key management around wallets and
exactly.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. When you talked about Liechtenstein and basically baking those tokens, right, with real world assets like gold. If you have one token, if I remember correctly, it's 1 gram of gold, right?
That's correct.
In your specific case, then one, we see that with stable coins all the time, right? One issue that many people see is since it's highly centralized, right? How or what kind of approaches do you know to actually give some security or transparency to your investors, for example? Are there some specific approaches?
Well, number one, again, being in a reputable jurisdiction and being regulated. Number two, or on VNX side, there is a specific line called allocation lookup. That means that every user can actually check to which gold bar his token is linked to. So in essence, VNX only issues tokens which are linked to particular gold bar once the request to issue the tokens to tokenize precious metals has been received. So each individual investor can actually know exactly the gold bar his or her tokens are linked to. And also what is important is if the customer has a certain amount of tokens, which is equivalent to 1 kilogram of gold bars, he or she can receive physical gold. So they can actually receive it here in Liechtenstein, or in some cases, if the delivery is possible, that would be delivered to the address of their preference. So that's another important characteristic, which should ensure people that they can indeed get the physical gold, and of course at any moment they can exchange it back to Ethereum, Bitcoin, or Euro, and they can withdraw it to their bank accounts.
You just said every token is specifically linked to one single bar.
Correct.
That's super interesting because usually many tokens, if you tokenize an asset, right, are actually fungible tokens, and I'm sure yours is, I would assume, a fungible token as well, right? But it has some nuances to a non-fungible token, right? Since you actually own a specific piece and maybe even with a number on it, with an ID, something like that. What was the reason for that choice, just out of curiosity?
To give people assurance that there is physical gold behind it.
Okay.
Because our concern, or our customers' concern, is not necessarily that VNX will not have enough assets, but many investors really would like to have physical gold, not tracker on the price which is backed by the assets, but real physical gold. And one of the reasons to show that each token is linked to a particular gold bar is to ensure or is to show the customers that the physical gold is there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, super interesting. Okay, so if I want to launch a bake token now, right? If I want to tokenize whatever, steel, for example, right? And it would be great if we could approach this from a really general standpoint, right? Like, how would one in general start tokenizing a metal, for example, right? Without any kind of tools. I know you have an amazing tool, but just for people to understand the process a little bit, what would be the required steps, the hassle, basically, the loops, the hoops, or what you say, that people need to jump through?
Of course, the first question is where the person who is launching the project is located, because that determines the regulatory regime. In some countries, it's pretty light. In others, it's much stronger. So that would determine the approach in terms of whether you can do it easily or less easily. Once the approach is determined, it's necessary to look at the business case. Why, for example, steel? What's the interest of tokenizing steel? And then what is necessary to do is, once the kind of approach is determined and the customers are, for example, found, is to try to find out the legal framework that would govern the issuance of steel. A lot in this area is legal work or work with regulatory concepts. Therefore, a person who is embarking on tokenization of physical assets should be prepared to spend a lot of time with legal teams, a lot of time with professionals in the regulatory areas, trying to understand, how can they do it, and where they can do it, and what are the limitations. But once that is determined, in essence, the technicality is actually a minor or secondary area. It's extremely important because it determines the security, it determines the way the assets will circulate. One would need to change. One would need to choose, for example, a blockchain protocol. One would need to choose if it's issued on a number of the protocols, interoperability, etc., etc., etc. It's very, very important, but paramount is legal and regulatory questions that needs to be addressed. Secondary, of course, is the technical questions, and then third is the work on the customers that you determined would be interested in your products. That's probably the steps one needs to be prepared to take when he or she is looking at tokenization of the assets.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so basically it's all around legal and okay, super exciting. So speaking of tokenization, right? I want to spark, I would say, the vision of people a little bit. Are there, or what are some other use cases that you know or could imagine in future about tokenizing any kind of asset? Right? Are there some things you think could be great?
What I see, and I've been in the space for the 5 years, is lots of ideas about tokenization of the assets. But I really see a few projects actually going to the final stage of actually releasing the projects, releasing their products to the market. For the same reason that we've discussed, regulatory and legal issues, there are many that needs to be solved. But in essence, anything that is existing in the real world can be tokenized in the Web 3.0. It can have a representation there. What would be the first projects we believe precious metals is for sure one of the first areas where it makes sense. But then any valuable projects where the partial ownership can help one way or another, for sure would be like focus number 2. But then it can be followed by a huge number of the items. We just don't know. I mean, we're really early in the stage of development. I've read a few pieces which are saying that crypto industry has passed the 99 2000 .com bubble. My personal feeling is we've passed a bubble of 93 94. We're very early in the development. My personal feeling is that blockchain has not seen its own .com bubble yet. It will come. But we're still very early in the development, and therefore the first area is really the basics, the foundations, so to say. And then, based on that, there will be new exciting things which are developed. What I personally see as an interesting area of development is convergence of the metaverse representations with the physical assets representations, and the interoperability or interchangeability of the items between the real world asset-backed, which could be used in metaverse and vice versa. That's a very intriguing concept, and I'm very interested to see how that area will develop.
Yeah, despite being the metaverse, at least in the current form, right, quite a new concept, it's super interesting to see what people come up with in the next couple of years, right? Wow, that's really an amazing episode. Do you maybe have 3 things that you think people should definitely remember from that incredible episode?
I think number 1 is that blockchain and crypto, in my view, is here to stay. Second, my personal feeling is, despite the kind of 2 waves of hype and interest, etc., we're still in the very early stages of the development. It was very interesting to see how the consensus, the biggest conference on crypto and blockchain, has been developing in the last 5 years that I've seen. It's really moved from the very anarchistic, so to say, or very strange place, meeting different people, etc., sometimes very crazy projects, sometimes not so crazy projects, to a semi-industrial conference where financial institutions, where a lot of business meetings, where from time to time you already see people wearing jackets, even though not ties yet. And to me, this is the sign that the industry is going to mature at some point. And I think the third point is, I would really encourage everyone to dare. That's I think, I love entrepreneurship. I really admire entrepreneurs, people who take risk, who try to either realize their dreams, make the world better, just make money for themselves. But by doing so, they create new products, they create new jobs, they create new opportunities. Therefore, I would really encourage everyone, and remember, if they do remember something, that they should dare. I think really this is a great area. Entrepreneurship is a great thing. Blockchain is a great area. So anyone who is listening, dare.
Love it. That's a great ending. Basically, people always only regret things that they didn't do, right? Instead of things they did do. Hey, thanks, Alexander, for being here. Thank you. And also, for sure, thank you to all the watchers and listeners. And yeah, hope you got a lot of value out of this episode.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wavect, the web-free software company that understands what you want.